Hi guys, my name is Sabrina and I'm here today with Lorraine, and we are going to talk with her about her journey and her line of work. So thank you so much, Lorraine. So yes, could you please tell us what do you do for work and how does everything how did everything started?
So I work as it's difficult to describe it really. I think that the title that best sums it up at the moment is a spiritual detective
Oh wow.
and a bit of a time traveller. So what I do is I take people into the subconscious part of their minds to get answers to the questions that they have about their lives, areas that they feel where they're stuck and are being challenged. And using hypnosis as the tool, I then, as the detective, guide them into the right space, and then we open up doorways and portals, and whether we take them into experiences from their current life to resolve them, or their past lives, or even into the interlife space,
Oh wow.
and also into the future, so that they can find out more about who they really are and why they're here.
Okay, oh, that sounds interesting. So how do you do that? Do you go through the hypnosis process, or do you work with any other energies in the process? How does it work?
So the main tool that I use is hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
I do have an ability to kind of intuit where people go, but for me it's very much about allowing the person themselves to have the experience. So hypnosis, which is quite often very misunderstood, and I actually teach it to doctors, so doctors and midwives. I travel all over the country to main universities, and I teach them clinical hypnosis. I don't do more of the esoteric stuff, I leave that bit. Most of them aren't quite ready for that yet, although they are starting to open up. But I'm teaching them clinical hypnosis, and even they are usually really surprised when they find out what it is, because it's only a focused state of attention, where the mind is focused in on the inner experience, and they're less involved in what's going on the outside world. And so in many ways it's very similar to meditation. It's very similar to the trance states that people find themselves going in and out of all the time, when they're daydreaming, when they're lost in thought. So I guide them formally into that state, which is very pleasant, and they feel very safe, and they always report that they were really pleasantly surprised at just how comfortable they feel in that state. And then they're able to get access to data and information that I see as being stored in the cells of the body, really, because our cells are holographic. So they contain huge amounts of information about who we are and where we've been, and whether that information is passed down through our lifetimes or even through the DNA coding that we bring in through our ancestors and our families. And in that state of hypnosis, we're able to open up that information. It's as though we can unravel that DNA code and find the bits that are faulty, and then we can dive right in and then resolve it.
Oh wow. And how did you get into this kind of work? What triggered it, or have you always been working with that? Have you always been?
Yeah, I think from a really, really early age I was very conscious that there was more to life than was being explained to me. I was always able to see and hear spirits, but I think a lot of the time, especially growing up in an Irish Catholic background, it got put down to me having a very vivid imagination, and everybody just thought I was telling stories. So eventually I think I even convinced myself that they were stories, but it was always there in the background, and I was very, very passionate about learning more about who we really were. The things I was being taught in my Catholic upbringing just didn't sit right with me. It didn't ring true. And so while I was still at school, I was searching spirituality and different religions and the more esoteric sides of religions, and going all the way back to the earliest times, to the origins of religion. And I realised that there was a really common theme, and that this theme was that we were A, we're all connected, B, that there is this energy, a source that we're all a part of, and see that with the right training and with the right mindset, and usually with those esoteric religions it involved becoming part of a kind of mystery school or part of a kind of initiation society, that you could go inside and unlock these secrets, the answers about this truth. And so I was really, really keen at a very early age to explore that and find out. So yeah, there weren't many enlightened masters around when I was growing up in southwest London, so it was mainly books when I started out. And I explored all sides, so you know, exploring the light and healing, and you know, looked into the sort of magic and the darker sides as well, because I think it's all about balance. You have to know where you are.
Exactly. Yeah.
And of course meditation and you know, working with, I just found as many teachers as I could as I started to get older, and I studied psychic development and all of it, and healing, Reiki, and there were lots of things that I enjoyed and they were good, but it didn't quite tick the box. I knew that there was something I was meant to be doing while I was here. And I had this driving search for this thing. I knew I had a mission, I knew I had a something, and I couldn't find it. So I just kept looking, and then again through a series of synchronicities, I ended up doing a training course that was on NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And on day 2 of the course, they introduced us to hypnosis. And it really was one of those life-changing, altering moments, because the first moment I did it with somebody, it was so extraordinary. And even when she came out, she said, "You must have done that before." And it was just this, it felt like the choirs of angels opened up. It was like the epiphany moment. That's it, I found it, and everything just fell into place. So I knew. And from that point on, I went on and I learned everything that I could about it, and spent years studying and doing diplomas, and you know, I spent about 5.5 years in the end studying hypnosis and regression and future life processes.
Yeah, wow, that sounds great. It really sounds like you are being a true detective, going through everything.
Yeah, and I'm still looking. I haven't stopped there. There's still stuff evolving and new things that are being shown to me all the time. So it's incredible.
So would you say that's then your soul mission? Do you believe in the soul mission, and that we have that kind of like find that connection to what we're here to do? Or
I do. I'm very passionate about the fact that every one of us here has a role to play, that we have something that we're supposed to be doing. But I'm also conscious that that role doesn't always necessarily have to be changing the world or you know, reaching the masses. Sometimes I think the mission in life is just to be a good, loving person. Sometimes the mission in life is just to learn how to love yourself. And that can actually be one of the hardest lessons for a lot of people. So it's not always a huge mission, but I do believe that we have all chosen, before we arrived here on the earth plane, some test or some challenge that we're going to work through. And I think that the experiences that people go through in their lives, where they're being challenged, particularly where challenges happen that are repeated, where there's a pattern, a cycle of something that keeps happening over and over again, even though people may be very determined that I'm never going to do that again, I'm not going to get into that relationship, or I'm not going to get stuck in that place, and then there you are all over again. And I think those things are great gifts in a way, because they're really clearly showing what needs to be worked on. And so when my clients come in and they talk about those patterns, then I know exactly where to direct them, because I take them to the source, to the origin of where that started. And for me, that is always going to be at a place in the spirit realms. So we direct them through that space, and it's so that they align with higher self, and we find out, well, what did you agree to? What was the contract? and sometimes the contract is simply, I'm going to see if I can learn to love myself no matter what. And of course that opens up for all kinds of tests and challenges when you come into the earth plane, and whether that is some sort of physical challenge or a mental challenge, or just the things that life throws at people to test them, to see if they will. It could be people coming in and being very abusive, and simply the answer to the test is to turn around and say no, actually not acceptable, because I'm going to look after myself, I'm going to take care of myself. And it can often be something as simple as that provides the ending, the finish of that lesson. But it's much easier sometimes for people to understand it when they see the experiences in their other lives. Because they see it unfolding. It's, I think, why we are so passionate about watching movies and reading books. because we see somebody else going through the journey and going through the experience, and the part of the mind, our subconscious mind, says, ah, I see, look, if they can do it, then it means it's possible for me too. So I work a lot with myths, and I work a lot with stories as well, telling stories.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason why I wrote my book, because a lot of the people, when they heard the stories of my clients and how their lives shifted, again, it stirs something, it awakens something in them.
Yeah.
And I use the story of the Wizard of Oz through my book, because it's such a metaphor for the soul's journey and for our journey through life on the yellow brick road, and the fact that we need love and we need wisdom and we need courage in order to travel our journey, but also we need adversity. So the Wicked Witch, who's cast as the villain in the piece, actually, when we look at the story, without her, none of them would have got to where they needed to be, without some danger, without some threat, without something for them to have to strive towards and something to conquer. So I'm all about reminding people that these things that they experience in their life were again, probably chosen by them in the spirit realms, that somebody volunteered to do it, and B, that they're not the victim of circumstances. So it's about saying, why did I choose to experience this? What is it going to teach me? Not why is this happening to me right now, which makes people very powerless.
Yeah.
So it's all about getting people into their true power and really recognising that every single thing that they experience is a gift for them, but particularly the biggest challenges.
Definitely. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do think, like, whenever you're going through something hard in life, you're like, oh, why is this happening? And it's life teaching you and putting you back into your path, really.
Absolutely.
Right?
So I always believe that everything happens for a reason, and sometimes that can seem like a bit of a cliche, and I tend to try and be quite grounded about the work. I have a very scientific mind, so I do need to have a sound basis to it, but I think if we look back through our lives, that things do start to make sense, that there is always going to be an element of a gift in everything that we experience.
Okay, well, talking about scientific minds, that's a really good time to ask you this question. So do you believe in God? What does God mean to you?
Well, it's interesting, growing up in a Irish Catholic environment, we had this impression of God that was a sort of dualistic thing, which again didn't really make sense to me. So on the one hand, I was being taught that he was benevolent and he was loving and that we were his children and that he was there to take care of us. And then on the other hand, if I didn't do what the priests told me, and if I didn't follow the rules, and if I wasn't a good girl, then he was going to throw me into hell forever, and God was going to banish me and I would be punished. And I just remember thinking, that doesn't really fit with what I feel. And so I had to really go away and ponder on that. And I remember at the time thinking, my experience of God, the essence or the understanding that I have, is that it is pure love, and that it's an energy, that it is how do I describe it? That it's a something that we are all a part of. So whether we call it God or the universe or source or higher power or whatever term we use, I don't see God as a man that's sitting on a white cloud, although of course sometimes we do get that, when we go into the spirit realm, sometimes the gods or these higher powers do appear in that form. And when I've been in that space and challenged that and questioned it, I've been shown that energy can take any form that it wishes. Yeah. And so sometimes we do perceive these higher energies in that way. So yes, I do believe in God, but I also believe absolutely with every fibre of my being that we are all sparks of that, we are all God. That we are all tiny little drops of the ocean that have come down here to have an experience, and that we are the representatives of God here on earth, here to have every experience that we can to fulfil the learnings and to learn how to come back to that space. And I think it is about learning how to come back to that space of love, the unconditional love that's embedded deeply in every one of us. So again, with my work, it's very much about getting people to identify that spark of light that's in us, and then recognising that spark of light exists in everybody. Yeah. In everybody, good, bad, indifferent, the ones that we have a judgment about, and about stepping out of judgment, because we never have an idea really about what a person's mission or their challenges in this lifetime.
Yeah.
So sometimes we judge people and think that they should change or they should be different. And I like to remind people that most people are perfectly where they need to be for the lesson that they've learned. It might be about suffering. And so who are we to judge about whether or not that's a good thing? It doesn't mean we don't help people when we can, but just to accept that we're all God.
Yeah, definitely. Amazing point of view. Thanks for letting us know. Another thing that we talk a lot about at the Power Within Us is the Ascension Movement. And there is right now, Earth is going through a magical time.
a bumpy magical
a little
time.
bump. So do you believe there is something going on right now in the Earth's grid of energy? Are we ascending or?
I think that it's undoubtable that there is something going on that is beyond what the majority of people could recognise, and I know myself in the work that I do, it has escalated over the last few years. So 10 or 15 years ago I was doing very practical, grounded clinical hypnotherapy, and every now and again there would be esoteric work or people wanting to explore their past lives and to find their life purpose.
Yeah.
And that has just advanced incredibly over the last few years, particularly the last 2 or 3 years, where 90% of my clients now turn up, and the reason why they're there is because they know that there is something going on, and they know there's more to life, and they're dissatisfied with everything that's going on around them, and we're seeing it all around us. We're seeing that the banking and the churches and all of these, even the education system and government, everything that we used to hold on to as a framework, it's slipping, and there are gaps in it, and we're starting to see the light that shines through it, that it's not quite as good as we thought it was, and people are starting to question, well, if that isn't right, then what power do I focus on? Where do I go? What do I hold to? And for me, it's about coming back to self, coming back to that truth of who they really are, and finding that space. And of course, when we find that power, that light within us, we don't need that power above us. We don't need to kowtow to anybody else. And it's an amazing time to be alive on the planet. And because so much more information is coming in, also as more and more people start to wake up, and more and more people start to look around and say, hang on a minute, there's definitely more here, and they're starting to open up to different healing modalities and different treatments. The minds of so many people are opening up. And we know at the beginning of 2012 there was a shift that brought more light into the planet than has been around for something like 25,000 years. So again, for me, it's like little torches, it's like lights that are going on all over the place. And it's just amplifying, and it's incredible. And it's a bit like 100 Monkeys syndrome. The more and more people that wake up and get it, they have an influence without even meeting people. So there are pockets all over the world of groups of people that are all thinking the same way, that are all working towards the same goals, and I find that incredible. And I know now, wherever I go around the world and I talk to people, it's the same story. It's the same opening up, and it's the same awareness, and it's about bringing balance into both the world of the, we hear a lot of talk about, bringing out the divine feminine around the world, reclaiming and bringing that back in, and for me it's all about balance. We can't go too far the other way, so it's bringing in that balance of the masculine and the feminine principles in each and every one of us, bringing that into alignment, and taking that forward.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. We are down to our last question.
Okay.
Thanks for coming over here and giving us the joy of your presence. Last but not least, we love to ask our guests. If you could share with us, what was the most amazing experience or the darkest experience that you have had in your spiritual journey?
Okay, so that would have to be, without shadow of doubt, even though I've had so many incredible experiences, but a weekend with a Brazilian shaman, and participating in an ayahuasca ceremony, and reconnecting with a very primal and very powerful energy, and finding myself facing my shadows, facing the deepest of the shadows, and being able to explore and understand them and release them, but also being taken to a space that was the most terrifying, because everything that I knew and everything that I thought about myself and the world kind of disappeared into molecules of energy spinning.
Wow.
Spinning energy that had no solid, tangible existence, and being able to see through everything, including myself, which was quite daunting, but being shown really, really clearly that I could choose in any one moment in time what my experience was going to be. So in that space, I could either choose to focus on fear, which made it terrifying, to have nothing solid, or I could move into my heart space and focus on the energy of love, which turned it into something that was extraordinary and blissful and really quite euphoric, and really showed me in a very tangible sense the fact that we are all one, and we're all made of the same stuff, and that all, and every being here on the earth plane is part of the same. So I would say that was one of the most extraordinary things I've done.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you guys for watching. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem.